There's that moment of the smell of the cedar and the way it moves when you hit it and the tool you're using that you think, I'm doing the exact same thing that my people have done for millennia. That's cool.
It was almost lost, and you don't want to lose something like that took thousands of years to develop and evolve. It's a beautiful art form. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of formal principles that were developed over thousands of years that are just amazing. The more you learn, the more you appreciate it, and the more you enjoy seeing it, and you just love to see it at a high level, just, what it once was.
At different points in our history, there was loss of knowledge and loss of connection, largely due to those objects being taken from our communities. For us to have pieces that are made now, I think that's extremely important, because there's a lot of work that has to be done continually to try to turn the tide and to try to reverse processes of removal and loss of our culture.
Monumental totem poles along the waterfront seemed like a good way to make that statement that this is our homeland and we're still here. Totem poles are anywhere from 20 feet to 100 feet high. That are made from western red cedar. The Indians of the Pacific Northwest, including the Tlingit, Haida and Tsimshian of Southeast Alaska, carved on these poles, and they would carve their crests, their spirits, and also symbols of their history, their ancient history, and more recent history.
It's a lot of work and it's a lot of dedication. And somebody in an interview that got in the newspaper said that the way the arts committee said that they qualified someone as a master carver was that they'd carved 5 totem poles. I gotta tell you, I laughed at that. I didn't know what I was doing after 5 totem poles. And I've carved nearly 30 now, and I still have to say, Dad, what do I do for this? It takes dozens of totem poles to be good at it.
At one point in time, before contact with Westerners, totem poles lined all of our coasts. They welcomed our visitors, coming to our homeland, told them that this was our land, this is our history. So they were prevalent, very prevalent. We had our initial contact with the Russians in 1741. And when the Russians came, of course, they were low in numbers, and our people were known as warriors. They were competent warriors. And so at that point in time, they had what we called a tenuous peace. The relationship was somewhat peaceful. And so the Russians didn't make any attempt to suppress our language. However, when the Americans arrived in 1867, when Alaska was purchased from Russia by the United States, the American military were the first to come. Initially, they abided by our laws, but shortly thereafter, they began to impose American laws and American belief systems and theologies. And so at this point in time, they began to suppress our culture. They viewed us as pagans. They thought that totem poles were idols and that we worshiped them. So they did everything that they could to suppress our culture.
we were always pretty fascinated by it and impressed, and we wanted to be able to make totem poles when we were at a young age. We used to just comb every book that we can find and just study the totem poles with a magnifying glass.
Learning by doing was really important. Trying to draw was important. But I think equally important is having access to those things around you. So if you're talking about immersion, the only way you can really do that is by being exposed to those items which are in archives. And at the American Museum of Natural History, they have 10,000 pieces in their basement which are not on display, which our people can't access. So I think it's really important to build opportunities for those people who are just learning to have access and be able to physically view those pieces, because there's so much you learn by seeing them that you can't learn from books.
It wasn't like what it is now, what's happening now up and down Southeast, and even down in even Washington. Back like in the late 60s and 70s, I had a friend who they called this the dark period of our art form during that time period. And I never seen a totem pole go up until I was way into my adulthood.
Kisani hiyaha tit aher uwakaka wa hqua iyataka hi ina.
In Kake, we were bombarded in 1869 in February, essentially to be discarded from this planet. And we're still here. And we're still doing our best to heal from that. I feel like my work is getting in deeper and helping this generation articulate and think about what it means to be indigenous, to help the Western world say, hey, be a little more mindful before you cast these stereotypes. This is what happened. This is manifested from this action. I feel like my art is just, I'm not trying to change nobody's mind, convince them, beat the pulpit, none of that. But here's a thought.
Unfortunately, it is an endangered art form. But thanks to the Mellon Foundation grant, we were able to carve 10 totem poles. But when we were preparing for it, I began to identify the number of totem pole carvers, master artists, and I was able to only identify 9 that could work with us. And so we realized at that point in time how endangered the art form was. We were able to assign 2 apprentices to each of the totem pole carvers. And following on that, we've now established a certificate program for apprentice totem pole carvers. So we think that we're rounding the corner and moving from that endangered state to a revitalized state.
Working on this project for me was particularly exciting because it wasn't just me. It was like having artists and carvers and so many apprentices, so many people involved in this process. It's amazing to have grown up in Ketchikan and Saxman and to be around a lot of totem poles, relatively speaking. But to have all these pieces created by such incredible artists here is like really inspiring and mind-boggling, and I wish I grew up at that time when that was around me.
You're in space with like Nathan Jackson, Stephen Jackson. Nathan more so was intimidating than Stephen. Stephen, he's very patient. But some of those old school carvers, they want you to know, and you better know now. And so that was also something to get past, was like, okay, how do I live up to standards of different types of carvers and their different expectations?
It feels good to be in a point where you can employ them and teach them at the same time. Stuff you wish you would have learned when you were 20 or 25.
We're not going to be around forever. if we hold any of that knowledge, whatever knowledge we have in us, and we die with it, then it's a waste of time. So for me, and especially 30 years teaching kids, that gets them on a straight track and gets them 40, 50 years of carving, knowledge, and passing it on the same way that it was done to them.
I hype myself up a little bit. I say I carved I was gonna say that I apprenticed, but I'll be like, I carved a totem pole with TJ Young and try to make myself seem a little better than it was. But for it being my first pole, you get a lot of confidence. You feel proud. Be honest, I came out of the experience with more respect. Because before, you don't really know what the carvers and stuff do behind closed doors. You just see their work. But going and do it every day, seeing what they do, got more respect for the culture.
Keep her back.
I come from a long line of carvers, but I'm the first woman in my family to be a carver. So I guess what's really important to me is that I am upholding my family name, and I'm on a journey to a better life, or a life that I want to be living.
It's just such an epic moment in time, to be part of, and these memories, not only for myself, but for the community and people that stop by to visit. The memories will last forever.
One of the goals of Sealaska Heritage Institute is to promote cross-cultural understanding. And so it is our hope that visitors, Juneau residents, the community, and our younger population will develop an appreciation of cultural differences and have a greater understanding of Native cultures. And also to accept, that cultural diversity is a rich resource that we have here in this community and here in this state. I am a Shungokedi. I am from the Thunderbird clan. I was very happy that Stephen Jackson, a relative of ours, was able to carve our totem pole.
The totem pole that I did was for the Shungokedi clan. So it's not my story, it's their story. And there are actually a lot of different versions of those stories. The first crest is the Thunderbird. The other was the Children of the Sun. There's also a white bear who led the clan leader and shaman over a glacier. And then on the bottom figure was Schwatke.
Lieutenant Schwatke hired one of our clan members, Yende Yonk, to bring him over the Klondike Trail. And he didn't pay Yende Yonk adequately. So according to our Tlingit law, we took his name and we took the military uniform, symbolizing that debt that was not paid to Yende Yonk or our clan. So we now claim it as a clan crest.
In my depiction of this story, I cast 2 bronze hands of the gold patina, and those are at the base of the pole. The bronze hands connect to the metallic nature of the gold.
We had been removed from downtown Juneau. And then when we tried to build the first model of the Walter Soboleff building, we had to go to the city to get approval of that design. And we were startled, we were absolutely startled. The city declined to approve of the design of the Walter Soboleff building because they said our site is located in the historic district. And the historic district represents the mining era and also Art Deco buildings. And of course we were, just flabbergasted that we, the first peoples of this land, could not have our own architectural art forms on our land. And so we had to go to the city council, and they finally did give us approval, but approval in a way that moved us out of the historic district.
That's also, I guess, another reason why I got into the art was like, growing up in that Juneau, where you're legit scared of people you never met just because, they beat up Native kids or they're part of that gang. Growing up in Juneau, you had to hide that sometimes. And then you sort of just got used to it. And it wasn't, it didn't feel good. And I didn't really think much of it until I got to the Yukon. I'm like, man, all these natives are not afraid to be native. They're just hella proud of who they are, and they don't, they don't take nothing. And so I started Tlingit dancing again when I was up there. I started feeling comfortable about who I was again. And so when I came back, just hit the ground running. I was like, I want to be as Tlingit as I could be. I'm gonna start carving. I'm gonna start doing this. I'm gonna go back into celebration. And that's exactly what I started doing. And I think that's almost, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Native artists, but I feel like that's a really big sort of push as to why we do this, is because we want our kids or nieces and nephews or, just having nothing but pride.
I'm a young guy. There's pretty young people, carvers, artists involved in this process, and we've grown up and seeing the limitations of our communities, and much of that is due to colonizations and the impingements, that were not just systematically, but mentally. And so there are restrictions that we've had, and I think this younger generation is kind of doing the best we can to put that aside and understand that this is about all of us winning. There's room for all of us to win.
If someone comes to this region and they see those pieces, they can sense that there's a power to the richness of the culture. I think they'll also be able to see that there's a lot of effort put into the revitalization of culture, and that there's a lot of investment. I feel that when I walk here and seeing the transformation, the radical transformation that this place has undergone in the last few years. I see the effort, I see the investment, I see the time of so many people working tirelessly, really, to make sure that this can be a place that's transformed and that really represents that this is Tlingit, but also a place for other people, for Haida, Tsimshian, for other communities throughout Alaska to feel like they have a place here, that this is their home.
You can't help but think, wow, what in the world took this long? Because they are just aesthetically just amazing and stunning, and just, they stop you. You can be going from A to B appointment, this, that, you stop and you're just like, whoa.
We are going to have 30 totem poles along the Juneau waterfront. 30 totem poles that are going to greet people to our homeland, greet visitors, and it'll be a statement that you are coming into the homeland of the Tlingit, Haida and Tsimshian. And it'll welcome them to our homeland and invite them to learn about our cultures. So I think it's going to be just really spectacular to see 30 totem poles on the Juneau waterfront in the same way that visitors that came to our shores 100, 200 years ago saw. I am absolutely hopeful that this totem pole project is leading to the revitalization of totem pole carving. Again, you know, we were very fortunate in having apprentices, you know, help those artists, work with those artists, learn about totem pole carving in the way that they used to in the past. And unfortunately, that apprentice program or that method disappeared during the suppression of our culture. But thanks to this project, it really has spurred others to start making totem poles. And through our art classes, through our totem pole carving, through our apprentice program, you know, we are moving to ensure that this art of totem pole carving will survive into the future.